to be a Notion girly. So I'm letting Notion Academy teach me formulas, which were a little intimidating until I knew exactly what they could do. Let me tell you what's actually scary about formulas, because it isn't math. I love math. I used to solve 3 variable equations just for giggles. It's a different conversation. What's scary about formulas is syntax. The little parentheses, the function names you've never heard of, the way you have to assemble things in exactly the right order, using things like dateBetween, dateAdd, replace, if, empty. These are our words. They mean something. And if you don't speak the formula language, looking at it feels like you're trying to read a sentence where every other word is missing, which is fair. That's intimidating, not because math is hard, because it's a language that you haven't learned yet. Notion Academy's formulas lesson teaches by way of RICE, which is a prioritization method. This works really well for product team backlogs and auto-tagging overdue sprint items. And if you're not already working in a product or project management space that is aware of those phrases, that may have already gone over your head. So we're going to pump the brakes, but we're going to look at this a little differently on how I can prioritize things for me and how I prioritize things for my surgery. So underneath the corporate framing and then underneath the syntax, a formula is doing one tiny job. It's a number that updates itself. You write one line, probably more than one, to be honest with you. You tell it what to watch, and from then on it just knows and automatically updates for you. No other input needed, which is fantastic. And the one I want to show you, the first one, was a number on my dashboard that probably kept me more sane and gave me more hope than it should have. I watched my surgery date count down, and then I watched me recover. It meant something. So now let me show you how it all works. So now I'm going to show you the exact formula that I use to build my countdown for my surgery and to calculate my post-op recovery days. And yes, I had help. Okay, so here's the actual formula. One property on my dashboard. Adding a formula in Notion isn't too bad. You go to your database, you add a property, make it a formula, and then Notion opens up an editor where you can put your formula in. So here is mine. Like I said, it's more than one line. But yes, this is the thing that's on my dashboard, and of course I gave it an emoji. We're not running a Bloomberg terminal here. We're tracking a recovery. So let me be very clear. I did not just sit down and know how to write all of this. I am a Notion learner, not yet a Notion expert. So what did I do? I had Claude help me out, and I told it what I wanted. A status line in my dashboard that knows where I am in this whole recovery process, whether that's a countdown to my surgery, a countdown after my surgery for post-op, a countdown to my return to work, and then my countdown after I've returned to work. I went back and forth quite a bit on the syntax, but that's how I landed on this. And before anyone comments, yes, Notion has AI built right in, and I probably could have used that, but I was not ready. I was far more comfortable with Claude and ChatGPT at the time, so that's what I used. Okay, so now let me walk you through what this is actually doing. The engine of the whole thing is dateBetween. That is the function doing the actual work. It takes 2 dates and then tells you the number between those dates. That's its whole job. Hold on to a date, hold on to another date, get back the gap. I'm using it twice in here, once for the surgery side and once for the work side. Up here, if either date is empty, the formula just shows nothing. Empty in, empty out. The formula checks where today falls on this timeline. It shows you a different status for each state. State 1 is pre-surgery, the countdown to the date, and the countdown to the moment when work actually goes quiet. State 2, post-op, before return to work. State 3 is first day back at work. That's the whole line. The formula just celebrates that day with you. The party emoji is mandatory. I will not be taking notes. State 4 is everything after that. 2 clocks running at once. How far am I into recovery? How long have I been back at work? Same formula, 4 states. It just knows where you are in the arc. And honestly, I think that this would be far more helpful if I would have had some issues. Knowing how far along I was in the process and to be able to go back to my doctor and say, hey, I'm 4 weeks out and this is how I feel. And if that was worse, being able to have those conversations about, do I need more time? The same formula that counts down your surgery is the one that counts you up after. I didn't have to build two things. I didn't have to remember to switch the day on or off. The morning after surgery, I opened my workspace and it automatically flipped to that day. Day 1 post-op, then day 2, on and on. Same number, different meaning. And let me show you a second formula. Because earlier I told you we'd come back to that whole rice concept, so it's time. I'm going to show you how I use a formula to triage questions to prioritize to my doctor for upcoming appointments. So Notion Academy's formula lesson uses a prioritization method called RICE: reach, impact, confidence, and effort. It's how corporate teams decide which projects to prioritize when they have too many to do. You score each project on those 4 factors. You do a little math. The highest scoring ones float to the top, which I read and thought, okay, cool. Not my life. I'm not running a product backlog here. I'm just trying to recover from some surgery. But then I thought about it some more and realized that I could use it in a different way, just not with projects. This is the database in my surgery tracker where I kept track of all of my questions I wanted to ask. Every question I had during prep and recovery lives here. The what should I expect? When can I drive? Is this normal? Should I be worried? All those questions. The ones that pile up between appointments. And then you're sitting in the exam room and totally forget them. Yeah, this is why I started to write them down. But that's the triage problem. Limited capacity, 15 minutes, too many candidates, like 30 questions, and a real need to know like which one to ask first. So I put RICE on it, 4 little number properties for each question: reach, impact, confidence, and effort. I rate each one 1 to 5 for each question. And I translated what each one means for me, because I'm not a product team. Reach for a corporate team is about how many users of feature effects. Reach is how many parts of my recovery this question could change. Does this question touch my meds, my activity, and my appointments? That's a bit of a higher reach. Impact is how much I would actually change my care based on the answer. Confidence is how sure I am I need to ask it versus how sure I am I can just, ask our AI friends. Or WebMD. Google. Effort is how hard is the question to ask. Some questions take 30 seconds, some are gonna need some follow-ups and examples. And then one formula just does all the math for you. Reach times impact times confidence divided by effort. Lifted straight from the formulas lesson. Did not change a thing. And then the list, we can resort. The questions with the highest score go to the top. So when I open this database the morning of my appointment, the high leverage questions are here ready for me. I don't have to remember the ones that meant the most for me because the formula did that work for me. 15-minute appointment, I landed all the questions that I wanted to about my care. And also, if they're recording and transcribing, why not ask them if you can record and transcribe too, and then you can use Notion's AI meeting notes, just floating that idea out there, okay? Okay. But here's what I didn't understand about formulas before. A database without formulas is just a list that you gotta read. A database with a good formula is a system that has an opinion. This one has an opinion about a lot of my questions that I want to ask my doctor. And it's right more often than it's expected to be. The dashboard isn't pretty yet. We'll get there. But the formulas, those are pulling their weight. Quick thing before I go. This week's Notion Academy lesson was all about formulas, a number that updates itself, the dateBetween function, the countdown that ran my surgery, and the same one that counted me up for recovery, and RICE, which turns out can work just fine for one person trying to prioritize other things in their life. You just have to translate each piece to make it your own. Next week is about webhooks, which sound even more intimidating than formulas. But I'm going to show you that it isn't. If you want to learn Notion next to somebody who builds things for the version of herself that needs them, follow along. New lesson every week. We'll see you next time.